Thank you, John.
Now let's bring in Bernard Zapor, former ATF special agent in charge. To the point that Paul just made, it's fairly new, I guess, that somebody not only attacks a church but sets fire to it. How does law enforcement get their hands around this kind of evil?
Well, they're going to be neutral until they can determine motive and intent, because they don't want to waste time, precious investigative time, going down the wrong track. They need to let the evidence speak to them so they can have some context. I mean, we all want to have context as to what would cause somebody to do this. We have to face the fact of incarnate human evil on our planet for examples of today, but the motive could be something unexpected. So until the evidence speaks to that and they have a handle, which they'll have quickly, we have to wait for them to finish on that.
Yeah.
Places of worship provide an extra vulnerability because people are there. Oftentimes we're detached emotionally, spiritually from us sitting there. And so, they're extra vulnerable during a service. And of course, this thing is unconscionable when you have a fire set. Fires rapidly accelerate. The consumables actually combust themselves. Fire service probably could not initiate suppression of this fire until they determined that the shooting was completely stopped. And so you have a lot of layers of complexity, both at the tactical level and the investigative level. And it's just, our prayers go out to the people that have suffered so much from this. It's just awful.
The common theme in a lot of these mass shootings often is the age of the gunman. I go back to Columbine. You had a couple of teenagers. In the Michigan shooting a month ago, that person was in his, I think, early 20s. The suspect in the Charlie Kirk assassination, early 20s. It seems like that's usually the case, but in this particular assault, police say it was a 40-year-old man. Do you take anything away from that, Bernard?
We are facing something horrendous in society today, and that is the disenfranchisement of all of us from families, from a higher power, from some greater purpose. We're being separated even further by living sort of this altar life through social media. And so people aren't beholden to the things that would give them, say, a personal ethos or framework. And so they're lost. And then when they're lost, the ego takes over. And that's when the devil whispers. They start doing things in furtherance of themselves, including horrific act of violence. And it's perpetuating in the U.S., unfortunately. But we really have to look at our emotional, behavioral health, and spiritual aspects of what's going on that's causing this disenfranchisement for people to go to a point where they can murder the innocent for absolutely no reason.
I've always wondered about violent video games as well. I don't think you mentioned that in your list, but the Newtown school shooter was a big fan of those really bloody video games. And it just seems like some of these people get desensitized to actual violence when they're playing it on the screen.
That's true. And we are being desensitized, if you like, from so many things. And, we litigate out of the workplace and out of school so many things that we used to hold true, and it's gone. And so we have to rely on what's being fed to us. And a lot of that comes from the external. And so people lack this framework to have something greater than themselves. And like I said, a personal ethos or conduct, or, even rule of law doesn't hold somebody accountable really for this. It does in the after event, but not in the prevention, or that somebody could even not be so sociopathic and so self-absorbed to do something like this for no purpose other than evil.
I wish we had more answers. Maybe we'll get them as the investigation goes along. Bernard Zapor, thank you.
Thanks, John.
We'll be back with more Fox Report.